that I think is useful to explain before we get into this unit is the concept of history as a timeline. As you start to get into this unit, you'll see that some things are described with dates like this happened around 3000 BCE or 4500 BCE. Not everybody understands what BCE means or how that relates to where we are now in history. So I took a few minutes to draw a straight but kind of slanted line on the board. Sorry about that, doing my best here. And ask you to picture a number line in math, a very simple number line with a 0 in the middle. My 0 is not in the middle for reasons you're going to see. But imagine a number line in math, all the negative numbers to the left of 0 getting bigger as they get farther away from 0. All the positive numbers to the right of 0 getting bigger as they get farther away. You don't have to be very good at math, I'm not, to have that basic concept in your head, right? Negative numbers on this side of 0, positive numbers on this side, all the numbers getting bigger as they get farther away from 0. So that's how we imagine history. It's not how we always imagined history. Instead, different people in different cultures would have different ways of reckoning time. And in one part of the world, they might count it from the founding of their city-state. So this is the 500th year of Rome or whatever. And in another place, they might count time by the ruler who was in power. So this thing happened in the 20th year of King Jehoshaphat or whatever. And then when you got a new king, you'd start a new system of counting. There wasn't a standardized system of how we talk about time until probably about 1300 years ago, when medieval monks in Christian monasteries started writing about history and coming up with a system where you could put all of history into a set of dates. And because they were Christian monks, they picked a 0 year and said everything before this is going to be a negative number, everything after this is going to be positive, and the thing they picked for a 0 number was the birth of Jesus, because they were Christian monks and they thought the founding of Christianity was the most important thing that had ever happened in history. They actually got the date of birth of the historical Jesus wrong by a few years. We know now that probably Jesus wasn't even born in the 0 year, but 4 to 6 years before that. But, you know, they were medieval monks. They couldn't Google stuff. They were doing the best they could. So they picked a year as 0. They said, obviously, this is the most important event in human history. And everything before that we'll call BC, before Christ. And everything after that we'll call AD, Anno Domini, which is Latin for the year of our Lord. Nowadays, we don't use those terms BC and AD because sometime within the last few decades, people kind of woke up to the fact that, oh wow, not everybody in the world is Christian. Not everybody in every part of the world considers the birth of Jesus the most important event in human history, but we do have this numbering system of dates that we're kind of stuck with now. Everybody uses it, everybody understands it. So now we say, everything before that arbitrary 0 year, we're going to call BCE, before the Common Era. And everything after it, we're going to call CE, the Common Era. Some of you, by the way, may have heard me explain this before in English when I talk about Julius Caesar and how much time it was before Shakespeare. Anytime you're going to talk about history, particularly when going back to the ancient world, you need to understand this timeline. So here we are in the absolutely fantastic and everybody's enjoying it year 2020 CE, 2020 of the Common Era. If you're watching this video in a later year, I hope you're looking back and thinking, wow, things got a lot better after 2020. But 2020 CE means that it has been 2020 years since the year that was arbitrarily chosen as the birth of Jesus and the 0 year. So any date before that, we're going back into history. I mentioned a few moments ago English class on Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is also going to make an appearance in social studies, and he died in 44 BCE. In other words, 44 years before the 0 year that was much later going to be chosen as the date for the birth of Jesus and the arbitrary 0 year of history. When we talk, as we're going to in this unit, about ancient Egypt and the Egyptian pyramids, we're talking about things that were roughly about 2,500 years BCE. So that means about 2,500 years before 0 plus another 2,000 up to our time. You can see my timeline is not really to scale. So the Egyptian pyramids are about 4,500 years back into the past from us. When we talk about, as we did at the beginning of the unit and in the last unit, about when humans began to use agriculture to plant and farm, we're talking about 10,000 years BCE. And when we look at the stuff we were talking about in the last unit, we're going way, way far back, tens and hundreds and even millions of years. Mostly we don't worry so much about dates that far back because that's before recorded history. But around the time people started writing stuff down, we started kind of trying to keep track of dates and say, okay, these were the years BCE, before the Common Era. Now we are into CE, the Common Era. So when we talk about history in this unit and in the future, if you see the terms BCE and CE, just picture that number line in your head. Before the Common Era is before the 0 year. CE, Common Era, after the 0 year. The numbers are getting bigger, and that's the timeline we're living in.